Now let's return to the story I was telling you about a short while ago, the government's replacement for the education maintenance allowance for 16 to 19-year-olds in higher education in England. Mr Gove was announcing this in the House of Commons a short while ago, said funds would be targeted at those most in need. Labour says that it actually amounts to a pretty humiliating U-turn by the government. We're going to talk to James Mills from the campaign group Save EMA, who's in our central London studio. Mr Mills, good evening.
Hi, Hugh, how are you?
Well then, it is a pretty big concession to you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, a deal's a deal, which was part of one of our proto campaigns we've been banging for quite a while, saying it's only fair. You promised beforehand to support those. You guaranteed them literally that you were committed to EMA only in June, and then in October you abolished it, and that was regardless of whether you was halfway through a course that you've been told by the government you were going to get supported through financially. So I mean, it's a big victory for us in that sense. You know, we literally have got something out of a government, and it's a good example for anyone that says peaceful demonstration doesn't work, because ours clearly does. But it's a small victory, but the war continues, because although it's great, and it really is, that the government are not going to be cutting EMA, or the replacement even for EMA funding, by 90%, they're still cutting by 60%, which, as you'll know, and all your viewers at home, if you cut anything by such a large amount of money, you are going to reduce the service and the provision for those it could help. And 80% of the people on EMA come from household incomes under £21,000 a year. 90% of pupils on free school meals go on to get EMA. So yeah, I'm very glad that they've finally listened to us. It's a shame that we had to threaten them with legal action, literally, and that's pretty much what's brought us about. The Save EMA campaign put out a national call to all students who had received this literature, guaranteeing them EMA, and I think the government finally listened to our calls that if you're not going to go this way, we will take you to court, and we don't want to waste more public money on this just to get, you know, what is basically pretty much a fair deal for young people. What I'd like to see is them to go even further than this and actually, you know, completely reverse decision at EMA, because at the moment I think it's very unfair that where you're born, rather than your ability, will determine how far you can go in the education system of our country. It's a very regressive and pernicious cut, and when we're gold-plated subsidies are going to the independent private school sector, yet of up to almost the same amount as EMA provision, and the government want to bring through a marriage tax incentive that costs exactly the same as EMA with a ridiculously large dead weight. We want to pick, or this government want to pick the pockets of the poorest teenagers in our country, and I think that's quite shameful. I was just going to, sorry to interrupt, James. I'm just going to basically ask you, given the intense feelings here, and we saw some of the protests, obviously. Are you saying you're satisfied? You're satisfied with what's being offered now? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I'm glad that they're listening and that they've listened to our campaign, because we would have literally brought this government and taxpayers' money into the courts over this issue. We don't have to do that now, which is quite a good victory for us and for taxpayers. But they're still cutting EMA by 60%. That's a lot of money, and this is almost 500,000 of the poorest teens in our country who may not get EMA. So, I mean, part of our campaign was pay the guys already on EMA and halfway through their courses, pay them in their second year. But the most important part is, why are we even looking at abolishing EMA? We had a letter in The Guardian only 2 weeks ago signed by 10 of the leading economists in our country, one of whom was the former economic advisor to the Cabinet Office, only in February this year. A man the government went for independent economic advice, saying it's ludicrous to be abolishing EMA, you should be reinstating it. And the current proposals are nowhere near good enough. They've also not said where to get the money from. I couldn't get where Michael Gove saying it's coming from the Treasury, or if it's coming from departmental spending cuts, which means more education cuts, which I don't want to see. And rumours are that it's going to come from careers advice, which, as a report out today shows, in state schools is already ridiculously bad. So I want EMA to be saved. That's the whole point of it. Save EMA, call it whatever you want, but give us the funding and the money we need, not cutting it. Well, we'll try and get some of the other answers when we talk to ministers. But James Mills, thank you very much. Thanks very much. James Mills, who's the head of the Save EMA campaign. We'll have a look at the business today.